Hi, I'm Don from DonDronesOn. On March 30th, the Drone Pilot Association of Canada's Steering Committee met with key members of Transport Canada's RPAS team for our regular quarterly meeting. We had a packed agenda, but managed to get through it, and everyone was happy in the end. We meet with Transport Canada once a quarter, and so this was the first meeting of the year. Representing DPAC were Mike Hill, Nick Seymour, Steve Bannister, and myself. The Transport Canada team was led by Jeremy Fountain, with Sylvain Bourque, Ashton Duff, Owen Peterson, and Carl Warren providing subject matter expertise. Air support, if you like. Our past meetings have run over time, so Jeremy was considerate in granting us more time, 90 minutes, but we still managed to run over. We started with a conversation on the latest AIM, which had just been published. My previous video, in fact, covers details on that, so I won't repeat the full story here. Jeremy and Sylvain confirmed that the removal of one of the steps in the default established procedure was quite intentional to prevent inappropriate restrictions by some airport operators. I call them soup Nazi operators. The new procedure promotes cooperation and coordination between the drone pilot and aerodrome operators, and emphasizes that we have the right to fly in the airspace as long as we're properly certified and are following the regulations. Airports and heliports cannot create their own rules, but instead should be sharing particulars like traffic patterns or other information that could be pertinent to the safety of the airspace. So the rumor that some airport, maybe sounding like Buttonwood, was planning on imposing fees and training requirements on drone operators is going to go away. Our next topic was an update on the newly expanded regulations that were proposed back in early 2021. The main focus was the creation of a new class of operations for low-risk BVLOS flights, and something called an RPAS Operator's Certificate, mainly for larger drone companies. The proposal also included a small concession to allow advanced pilots to fly BVLOS under certain strictly defined cases. On the negative side, they also proposed fee increases for drone registration and certain SFOC applications. I'll put links to the videos about this stuff in the description below. Apparently, all of this has gone through some amount of adjustment after consultations that were held back in 2021 and will be formally published any time now in the Canada Gazette 1 stage. Budgets to support the proposals have even been approved. The Canada Gazette 1 stage triggers further public consultation, which culminates in the final regulations being published in Canada Gazette 2 many months later. The effective date will be announced at that point, probably several months beyond that, so almost certainly not until 2024. I'll be an old man by that time. Okay, wait, I'm already an old man. Anyway, we moved on to an update on that exam question improvement program that they had started on. They have now completed the review of their entire pool of 1,200 or so questions and are about to decide what actions to take on the most recent batch. Now, if you recall, they parked about 100 questions roughly in their first pass, stuff like scuba diving questions and some hypoxia stuff. I'm glad they're doing this, but I remain rather skeptical of their approach. They're not yet scrutinizing the knowledge requirements themselves, just the questions. And it's being done via external contractors, and at least one such contractor is a ground school. Kind of a fox guarding the henhouse situation, in my opinion. So we asked how DPAC could get involved, and Jeremy was happy to explain and offer his support. Frankly, it sounds pretty complicated with special security measures and stuff like that. So I think I'll start doing exam audits where I actually take the exam but focus on the suitability of the questions more than actually trying to pass. And without copying questions themselves, which is illegal, I will take note of the topics and provide feedback to TC that way. And before you ask, yes, it is okay to fail the exam after you've passed it. I won't lose my pilot certification. But I might not share how badly I do. Providing feedback to TC will be simple, lightweight, and fairly direct. Maybe even fun. I don't know. We had a brief side discussion at this point about enforcement and fines, something I covered in another recent video. Jeremy mentioned that most interactions between TC enforcement and RPA pilots actually end up as an educational moment rather than the issuing of an actual fine. Unless, of course, there's been a serious offense or perhaps criminal activity is involved. An interesting little tidbit. The next topic was the Aviation Radio kerfuffle. Transport Canada, NAV Canada, and many of us strongly believe there are legitimate cases where it is appropriate for drone pilots to use the aviation radio band to announce the presence of a drone operation. Cases like flying in the vicinity of an airport, but if you haven't been able to contact the operator, or BVLOS operations, or asking for authorization in a NOTAM situation, and of course, in emergencies. But ISED, also known as Industry Canada, regulates the use of airband transceivers and is not allowing drone pilots to go on the air. Right now, airband transmitters are only permitted inside manned aircraft or at authorized fixed ground stations, such as an airport. Discussions have been ongoing for months, but there is still a deadlock. I'll keep you posted on any progress, but for now, don't run out and buy an airband transceiver. And if you have one, don't use it on the air unless it's an emergency. Remote ID. As you know, DPAC prepared a formal position paper on remote ID recently and provided it to Transport Canada. In a nutshell, DPAC thinks that it should be entirely optional for drones under 25 kilograms, and the operator location, if transmitted at all, should be available only to law enforcement. Our position paper is on the DPAC website if you want to read it. Ashton from the TC RPAS traffic management team took the lead on this discussion. We were praised for taking the initiative to prepare the paper. It made our position very clear and, well, undeniable, for lack of a better word. And as stated in the paper, we formally requested participation in committees preparing remote ID regulations to ensure that the recreational drone pilot perspective is heard just as much as the larger commercial operators. This request was acknowledged. The good news is that Canada seems to be far behind other countries when it comes to formulating remote ID policies and regulations. We still have some runway. And finally, we talked about the MAC situation, briefly. The MAC organization, which represents some 10,000 RC aircraft pilots in Canada, had an exemption from the current regulations, but lost that exemption recently due to an alleged contravention of a formal condition of the exemption. The MAC organization has had an exemplary safety record for 70 years, and yet now many clubs are virtually grounded if they're in controlled airspace or flying non-safety declared aircraft or gliders that need high altitudes for effective flights. Fantastically safe yesterday, but requiring a massive amount of paperwork and approvals today. Makes no sense to me. Now, the DPAC team at the meeting, including myself, are not members of MAC, nor were we authorized to speak on behalf of MAC. But we did indicate our support for MAC and belief that reestablishing their exemption or something like it made a lot of sense. Jeremy acknowledged this and remarked that Transport Canada was obligated to consider applications for exemptions, but had not yet received one from MAC. So that about covers our meeting. As I said, it ran over an hour and a half, so there was a lot more discussion that I could possibly squeeze into this video, but I think I've covered the key points. If it doesn't come across, I want to emphasize one thing. These meetings are positive. At times we don't agree, but there is very clear mutual respect and professionalism by all parties. even when we call their baby ugly. We focus on constructive actions and agree on the principles and objectives: safety in the air, reasonable regulations, listening, and cooperation. Progress is slow, but we can see advancement. Things like changes in the AIM document to support RPAS pilot rights and small improvements in the exam questions. It's very encouraging, and I'm proud to be part of the DPAC team making it happen.